Good afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever you're at, and welcome to the Happy Recap Podcast for the week of the 11th of April, 2021. I'm JB, along with my good friend EJ, and our guest and our friend Michael Barron is joining us as well. Going to highlight, if you can, the highlights of this week. The 2-3 start of the New York Mets again today, recording on a Sunday. The Mets were just suspended, not rained out per se, but suspended after just a sliver of play today, enough to greatly and righteously anger Marcus Stroman. And going to you, EJ, first. I think it's safe to say, while we're dealing with a very small sample size, the word underwhelming comes to mind with the kickoff to the season.
Yeah, I think underwhelming both in the performance on the field, but also the fact that we're 10 days into the season and we've only played 5 games. I mean, that's super frustrating. First, the COVID stoppage, of course, that took away our opening weekend, and now getting rained out or delayed here today. And that's going to be fun come August 31st, starting a game with a man on first and one out. That should be all types of fun. But yeah, it's definitely been an underwhelming start, aside from, of course, Cy DeGrom, who's just been absolutely incredible. He's 14 inning pitched, one earned run, and nothing to show for it.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, we look at it, we have talked about so many times the special pitcher that Jacob DeGrom is. And to some extent, on opening day, he didn't seem to have, quote unquote, everything you'd hoped. And he still managed to basically pitch better than most teams' aces anyway. Basically, two golden starts, two mid-season caliber starts of his have now been essentially wasted.
Well, it's funny because I agree he wasn't 100% on when did they play? Monday, right? That was his first start. But we learned early on in his career in 2014, 60% of Jacob DeGrom is better than most everyone else in the league. And so that other 40% is out of this world. And that's what you saw on Saturday. And, as I put it yesterday, I mean, that was a disgraceful performance on behalf of their ace pitcher. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They were horrible on Saturday, and handing him a loss when he struck out 14 batters. I mean, I didn't know what else to say. I mean, that's how I would have felt as a player. I would have felt disgraced. But I think you use the word underwhelming. I think I think sluggish has really been the general theme to the beginning of this season, just between not playing a whole lot. Like you said, they've only played 5 games in 10 days. But also, the offense obviously has severely underwhelmed in the first 5 days. The decision-making, the on-field in-game management, the lineup management, the bullpen management, and so on and so forth has been, again, sluggish, to say the least. So hopefully tomorrow, they can actually start the season and get it off on the right foot again. It's been very difficult for them, but I think they've made their own bed in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think one of the things coming into the season that we've long since given up on to an extent is the belief that we're going to get runners in when we have runners on base, but it's seemingly been more abysmal than previous years. And two guys that you would expect to be at the forefront of leading us out of that, in Michael Conforto and Pete Alonso, have been digging the hole deeper.
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm not. Their offense obviously has been terrible over the first 5 games, but I'm not necessarily worried about that quote unquote small sample. I mean, they've had a lot of base runners. But what I'm worried about is that you're hearing the same messaging come from Luis Rojas on what the problem is versus what the problem was last year. It's the same thing, different season. So that's what's bothering me. And you're not seeing an improvement year over year. You're not seeing them get better, just from an execution perspective with runners on base. The simple situations where they have a runner at third and less than 2 out, and I mean, God forbid they drive the runner in. So 1 run in, right? And this was the problem last year where I think I wrote it down earlier. What their overall team OPS was 807, but with runners in scoring position it was 735. And you're seeing more of the same trend this year. It's literally the same trend. And that's what's bothering me. It's not the slow start, because we all know offense goes in ebbs and flows, even for bad offensive teams. Sometimes they hit. but it's that approach which is bothering me, which isn't changing, which isn't adjusting. And again, it's only 5 games, and tomorrow they can score 15 runs, and everybody's going to be, up at, celebrating. But I can only comment on what we've seen so far, and it hasn't been good.
I mean, the Harvey game, the Jake game, first inning. Sorry, somebody just tweeted.
It's like
You're watching the Orioles all of a sudden? Is that how bad it's gotten
Dude,
for you?
I need some type of baseball today. The Jake game, first inning. There you go. Perfect example. First and third, no outs. And I'm never one to kill Francisco Lindor, but I think you kind of got to pick your spots as to attempting to swipe a bag there. When if you just get that run in, giving Jake DeGrom that early lead is going to do nothing but benefit him.
Right, and that's another good point. That's part of the adjustment that you're not seeing, in my opinion. When you're not hitting and when you're not driving runners in, you have to get creative in scoring runs. And I'm not asking these guys to bunt. I'm not asking Pete Alonso to drop a bunt down like Bryce Harper did for some reason earlier this week, and it worked. But
right.
But like I said, stealing a base, maybe put a hit and run on. Maybe just make a contact play with runners on, just to get the train moving a little bit. And that's been a big part of the problem too. They're not moving runners up a whole lot. Again, a continuation from last year, and that's what's bothering me. I know it's early, but I said that all year in the 60 games that they played last year. I said it until pretty much game 50. Well, it's early, and then it got late.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly got late fast. It was early and then late. I mean, there's no mid-season like there will be this year, but certainly, there are some. I think it's hard to believe that this particular lineup will be this bad this season. I mean, they're too good to be this bad. Talk a little bit though about the pitching, which has been with apart from starting pitching wise. Apart from 2 innings by David Peterson, has pretty much been exactly what was advertised.
Yeah, I think just in general, the pitching staff as a whole has been exactly what is advertised. Where you're getting stellar starting pitching, and which isn't a bad thing considering they're down really one starting pitcher plus Noah Syndergaard, who wasn't a factor last year. And the bullpen has struggled, and I think we kind of expected that. I don't know that I expected Trevor May, to struggle in those first 2 outings the way he did, but I also think he was a little bit misused in the second outing. So I kind of discount what he did in the second game. But I think it's really pitched to expectation. I think we all knew that the bullpen was a weak spot coming into the season, and that there would be questions on a daily basis on who's going to be doing what and when, outside of Edwin Diaz, who personally I never believed should have been handed the closer role to begin with. But I still throw out what happened yesterday, just because didn't matter what the score was yesterday. I don't think anyone has missed the mark on what you've seen so far in the first 5 games as far as the pitching goes. Jacob has been, I don't know how this guy just keeps getting better. I think, Ron Darling has put it best when he says, he's got a young 32-year-old arm, or whatever the term he uses. There isn't a lot of mileage on his arm, compared to someone like Clayton Kershaw, who has pitched a lot of regular season innings plus postseason innings. And I think that's helped, but he's just must see TV, and he's been that way for 2 or 3 years. And and sometimes if I can't watch a start in its entirety, I literally get upset. And that's what bothers me about yesterday, where they just totally wasted, a brilliant Cy Young caliber effort from him. But I think the rest of the pitching staff, has really followed suit and really just tried to live up to Jacob deGrom and pitch really well. I actually thought David Peterson pitched pretty well after that first inning. When he, gave up the 4 spot in the first inning, he was pretty solid the rest of the way. I know Jacob Barnes gave up a 3-run homer at his expense, but I still think he started finding his spots with the fastball and slider. I don't want to say vintage, he only has 10 starts, but that he was finding those. He's really piercing those corners on each side with the sinker and the slider, and that's what made him successful last year. And I think you saw him find that success again. In the middle of that start, the line may not look as good as it should, but I think overall he pitched. He was impressive in that he was able to adjust and get better in that game.
Yeah, I completely chalked up what Peterson did to just first start of the year nerves. I mean, he is,
Yeah.
like you said, it's only the 10th start of his career. I think if what we get out of him is what we saw from the third inning beyond, he's going to be just fine. You're not even asking him to be a top or middle of the rotation. You're asking him to be the back end of the rotation. I think he'll be totally fine. The guy who really actually excited me unexpectedly was Walker. I really didn't see a lot of him in the spring, so I didn't know what to expect, but I loved what I saw out of his repertoire on his start.
Yeah, I thought he pitched really well in spring training, but he kicked it up a notch the other day with his velocity. I mean, his velocity was a couple miles an hour faster, and he had a very good movement too, which was I didn't necessarily see in spring training. And look, I think if he's healthy, I thought that was a very underrated move by this front office. Granted, how many times over the last 15 years have we said if he's healthy, right? But I think if he can stay healthy, I mean, he's young, again, a guy who hasn't thrown a lot in the last 3 or 4 years, but that may also work to his and the team's advantage in that he's got, a young arm for 28. He may have the arm of a 25-year-old because he just hasn't thrown a lot. But yeah, I mean, I was very impressed too. And I'm glad they were able to win that game because that was another effort that couldn't go wasted. And it's just unfortunate they wasted two really good. I mean, you just can't get over these, blowing these DeGrom games. It's just, he's on a Hall of Fame track and he's giving you everything he's got out there every 5 days. I mean, just give him 3 runs. Just give him 3 runs to work with, for God's sake,
I mean, it's funny. We keep looking at the game. I keep coming back to when comparing Jacob deGrom's effort yesterday. Oddly enough, is a game that Steve Carlton pitched against the Mets back, I believe it was 1970, where he tied Seaver's record for striking out 19 and lost 3-2.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. You're wasting a Hall of Fame caliber effort, right? That's what I said before, and and that's really what we're talking about now with deGrom. Like, is he going to be that Sandy Koufax, Ralph Kiner type where he puts together like 10 dominant years and gets into the Hall of Fame? I think that's really where the discussion is. And certainly another Cy Young award would help. But, that we're having this conversation about, a Met to me is just a thrill. We don't often get to talk about those kinds of things.
It's not often the Mets have the best anything in baseball, never mind the best starting pitching. So that is a nice feature that we have with Jake right now.
Well, and now they have the best shortstop, right? And you can thank Steve Cohen for that. So they have the best shortstop and the best pitcher, and those are two pretty good areas to have the best players in, if you ask me.
And a couple other guys who have been to the All-Star game before. So we get to see a Mets studied All-Star team this year if things go well. I think you bring up the fact that it was nice that they were able to get Walker off the hook and actually get the win in that game. And I personally, when McNeil hit that home run, I said, this is it. This is going to be the turnaround. So that's just what makes this weekend kind of all the more of a disappointment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was a good, I even said after the game, hopefully this wakes him up and shakes him up a little bit. I mean, that's the kind of win, like you said, that, can often, turn the tide. But, I have to believe, like you said, like the offense is too good to be this bad, right? So it has to turn soon. But again, was waiting 60 games for that to happen last year. So, and like I said, I'm concerned about, the language being used to describe the offense and the approach and the execution. I mean, that's what's bothering me, that you haven't seen that philosophical adjustment. But, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Got a long way to go here.
Yeah, we definitely have a long way to go. I was communicating with EJ via text on opening day there at Citi, and after the McNeil home run, he says, "Did anybody need that more?" And I immediately responded, "Conforto does."
Yeah,
and,
he does. I mean, he's
had
a
rough reality
week,
was,
hasn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, I texted a few minutes later, of course, after what happened. That's kind of not the way I saw that going. It was one of the most bizarre anticlimactic wins I've ever seen. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, he was struck out with the bases loaded, and then he wasn't, and it was, you kind of didn't know what to think there for a couple minutes until it was determined he did something he shouldn't have done for the sake of the team. I personally don't have a problem with it. I know a lot of people do, but I mean, that's just, it's part of the game. It's up to the umpire to make that call, and he didn't. And I'm glad Ron Copa owned it. But, that's not the first time you've seen a guy stick his arm into the zone or, lean into a pitch or anything like that. So I think Conforto has had a bad week between, his comments about the vaccine and his poor performance. And so I think this just compounded it for some people. But, and obviously, yesterday you heard more boo birds. But fortunately for him, the week's over and maybe tomorrow he'll go 4 for 4.
That
If
was
they play, of course.
right. That was as loud as I've heard a Mets home fan base boo a player since the days of Oliver Perez. So that was a
Yeah.
little disheartening. I was actually really encouraged. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it play out to fruition due to the weather. That Louis, I had texted one of my buddies after yesterday and said, at the very least, Louis got to move him down in the lineup. And sure enough, that was to come to fruition today. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it play out.
Yeah, and I think he's going to benefit from that a little bit. I think, I certainly can't speak to why, he's slumping. I mean, we've seen him go through these ruts before. I don't think this slump for him though is really extraordinary. I think it's just compounded by the politics that he may have inadvertently brought into his own situation. And I personally don't know how he could have answered that question and walked away, with everybody being happy with him. But I think that's really part of the problem here. I mean, everybody's been saying to me for years, well, he's a 259 hitter, he's a streaky hitter, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, and now he's like 1 for the week, and that's a bad streak. And this week he can go, 10 for 18. And then are we going to forget about the vaccine comment and what happened this past week? It's just the way he is. But that does have value and merit still. They shouldn't not sign him all of a sudden because he had a bad week,
Well, I mean, I think that, when you look at the first week, regardless of how the season turns out, most of the stuff that happens is on the key of forgettable, with the possible exception, I think, of Jake's start yesterday. Especially, I think that one is the one that we'll be talking about most of the year, because it should have been, it should have, would have, could have been, especially when we start talking Cy Young. If there's any differentiation amongst the candidates, that start should play a role, but because it's not a win, because they blew it for him, it doesn't have the same luster on it that it really, really should.
He could get to, I was thinking yesterday after they lost, I said, this guy could actually get to the Hall of Fame with 95 wins in his career, can he? If he sticks around long enough, he'll get enough no decisions or losses with the Mets, and he'll be in the Hall of Fame with 95 wins.
I want to see that plaque. That's going to be one interesting worded plaque.
Mets never hit for him.
Abandoned by teammates.
Well, speaking of the offense, we did lose a pretty important piece of it in JD Davis this week. He gets plunked on the hand. Now he's on the IL. And literally the second that he got plunked, I texted JB, and because we had been talking about this offline, is how are we going to get Guillermo more at bats, and how many ABs was Davis going to get you for the year? So I texted JB and I said, well, I guess we know how Guillermo is going to get some more bats to achieve reply. Well, not the way we wanted it to happen, but that actually hasn't really panned out. He got the one game immediately after, and then not since.
Yeah, I figured this was a good opportunity for him. And I do believe, and this isn't not meant to be a knock on JD Davis, but as much as Guillorme has struggled defensively, he struggled in spring training too. He had a couple of bad games. I still think he makes the infield defense better, just from a range and glove perspective, But again, I think it's one of those things. You just have to, let the sample size get larger, if you will, and give him time, give all this a little bit of time. But yeah, I mean, none of the buttons. I almost called him Louis Lopez. I was looking at an old baseball card of his earlier. None of the buttons Louis Rojas has pressed has worked out well this week. That's just the truth. Like, he can't, he just can't hit the target. And hopefully it's just one of the, just a bad 5-game stretch or whatever. And the players start making the decisions look a lot better, right? Because I think that it's easy to get on Rojas for playing this guy here or this lineup there, and why didn't you move Conforto down earlier in the week? It's easy to say that when no one's doing their job, and when they are doing their job, no one's praising the manager. So I think we just have to wait and see, as far as Guillorme is concerned, give that a little bit of time. I do like the way he's grown offensively over the last couple of years. That's not just necessarily from the results. It's just really about, his approach and, the way he attacks the strike zone. I think he's gotten a lot of praise for that too around the organization. So I think we just have to give him some more bats at this point.
Well, we looked at, especially with the bats, what's not working. Let's look at the one thing that is, and that is the hit machine, the on base machine. That is Brandon Nimmo.
Yeah, I've lost count of how many times he's been on base this week. Like I just can't keep count. Which is not a bad problem to have. I mean, nothing ever really. It's the same old story, and it's a good story with him. I mean, he's so underrated just in his ability to be selective and work counts and get on base. And then, he'll surprise you with, that gap to gap type of power that he has. What's his on base percentage? Right now. I mean, it's incredible. I was counting, I was tallying how many times he's been on base, and I just lost count, yesterday. But
It's funny,
it's just a testament to how good he is.
In the off season, I was telling basically anybody who would listen that as nice as George Springer would have been, I didn't think he was worth 20 million more than what Brandon Nimmo was making this year. And I just love that Nimmo, after all the talk about having to replace him, that he heard all off season, he just consummate professional, got to the ballpark and went to work this year.
Well, that's his personality. I mean, he's so positive. And even when, I've seen him offline, but at the QBC the last QBC was the most recent time I've had a chance to chat with him, and like everything is just so positive. Like you just kind of want to like slap him in the face with some mean. It's just, he's such a happy. He's legitimately one of the nicest players I've ever had the chance to know, and I think that he's not a fake guy. Like this is how he is. What you see on the field is the way he is, personally too. And, I think that has helped him become the player he has become, because like you said, he has this distraction where everybody wants to replace him with Springer in center field. The center field defense sucks. And the defensive criticism isn't unfair. With that said, he doesn't let it bother him, and he doesn't take it out on the field with him. And he just still goes out and does his job, gets on base, 40% of the time. And he's a huge difference maker. He's an underrated player. He's really, when you look at his skill set offensively, he's an elite player, and underappreciated. And you make a good point. Like, is paying George Springer $20 million more worth it for a defensive upgrade? Because the question is Nimmo going to be $20 million worse than George Springer? And the answer is no. Brandon Nimmo is probably going to play to the level of 18 or 20 million, which at that point, you figure it out defensively. And that's when you talk about the late inning, replacements. That's maybe been the proper investment. I mean, time will tell, but, maybe that was the appropriate investment in guys like Almora, and, and they can shuffle him, in and out for other defensive whizzes too. So I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I was upset they didn't sign Springer. I thought they whiffed on that, but I also don't, I agree with that point, 100%.
To answer the question earlier, 565 is his current on base percentage, with a slugging of 588 and a batting average of 412. Obviously, small sample size, but great start for Brandon Nimmo. And the one thing, it's 6 walks in amongst that as well, to the point where every time he gets on base, in amongst the many voices already traveling in my head, I always hear Brad Pitt. He gets on base.
He gets on base. Yeah, that's right.
Gets on base. Well, Michael, man, I always appreciate having you join us. It's always a pleasure. Glad to have you with us. Certainly glad that you're through some of your health things that have gone on since you last joined us. Hopefully we're not the cause of them. So,
well, it's fun. You're not, but it's funny. I was thinking about it about an hour ago. I said the last time I was on, that was like the first day of all of the bad stuff that had happened. Like I wasn't symptomatic yet of COVID, but that, like, if just a couple hours later, I started not feeling well, just after our call that day. And so here we are, what, about 2.5 months later? And a lot's happened since then.
Well, I definitely give you credit for opening up about everything publicly that's gone on with you, buddy. We're all keeping you in our thoughts and wishing you nothing but the best.
Yeah, we are completely.
I'm doing all right.
Good. And we're on your side, whatever we can do.
Oh, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. And I'm doing okay. I feel pretty good. Get a little tired at night, But all in all, I think, we're on the upswing now in this house,
Hopefully the team is as well, and they can keep your spirits flying.
Well, so they're not helping the cause here over the first 5 days, but I'm keeping the faith. I'm still trying to stay positive. I was really pissed yesterday, but I feel better today,
Well, we always appreciate it, Michael, and we'll definitely have you back soon.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Thanks, buddy.
Michael Barron joining us, and always a pleasure to have him with us. And it's good to have him back with us because, you always hear what he's gone through and go, gosh, I like him a lot. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. Not that I want bad things to happen to anybody, but he's one of those good people you want good things to happen for, especially because, it always does seem like there's some sort of weird injury or something bad going on for him from time to time. And just want to wish good things to him and all, one of our good friends, even if he's not on our side with Edwin Diaz. We want misused Edwin Diaz, I might add.
We want our good guys who are our good Mets friends and are generally good people in general. We want nothing but the best for him. So I'm glad he's on the mend, and we'll probably have him on quite a bit this year because he's always quick to contribute to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's always got good things to say. Like I said, even all the stuff we disagree on, by golly, we keep it civil around here, yo. So it's always a nice thing. And I've got higher hopes for this week. Any thoughts from you on going into the week to come?
Well, not really about the week to come, but my one concern is that they announced that they're going to resume this game on August 31st, which immediately got me looking at that schedule. And I see, so we play a doubleheader on the 31st, and we play sort of doubleheader.
It's a 9-inning game and a 7-inning game.
Right. And then we play 5 games in 4 days with the Nats on Labor Day weekend. That's a lot of baseball the Mets are going to be playing. In fact, they don't have an off day between August 23rd and September 15th. So that's going to be a lot of baseball, and we are definitely going to be talking a lot about that depth that we've been talking about so much this year.
You'll need it then, and keep in mind too that now obviously you'll be able to call up an extra guy for the double header, but roster expansion, if I'm not mistaken, I believe September 1st it's no longer 40. I believe it's 28 this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right about that.
And so you're going to be juggling with Syracuse quite a bit in that particular week, especially. And I would imagine majority of that will be among the relievers. Speaking of the relievers, one thing I didn't get to cover with Michael when he was with us, but I wanted to get your take on is the way that this bullpen has performed this week. I think a lot of it has to do with, now, obviously Edwin Diaz was not put into a safe situation at all this week after not pitching for 11 straight days. And I'm going to, despite the fact everybody already knows I'm an Edwin shill, that's fine. I'm going to certainly give him the pass I did yesterday, pitching back-to-back days in non-safe situations. Something was bound to go wrong. But the reality of it is, apart from Edwin Diaz, everybody is out of sorts to an extent because there's no Seth Lugo. And I was just going to say that I feel like that kind of, the fact that the bullpen is that shaky with their linchpin pulled out, that it really is a situation where it really shows the value of somebody like a Seth Lugo.
Oh, no doubt about it. We knew not having Lugo was going to be a detriment to the bullpen. And I think you're right. I think one of the other things that's kind of affecting them right now is, aside from Diaz, there are no set roles. There is no official 8th inning guy. And let's be honest, we haven't really had that many situations yet to see a defined bullpen 7th, 8th, and 9th with a lead, what that's going to look like. But I definitely think that not having Lugo there as the firm 8th inning guy is definitely causing some juggling right now for Louis.
And the other thing too is with the all the consternation about some people who thought there were other pitchers who should have gotten promoted ahead of Gesellman. Gesellman made the team. Where is he? Literally, I believe he is the only Met not to play this season. I'm almost entirely positive that's the case 6 games in, counting today's sliver as a game. That he's the only one not to see any game action. So it's kind of like, why bother?
And we've seen him pitch well in the past. So you would have thought that he would have had some time to get in there. I kind of got the feeling that if they had resumed today, you were going to see probably a healthy dose of him and Joey Lucchese, but it just wasn't meant to be. And really, I mean, everybody's given up runs. I think Castro's better than what we've seen out of him thus far. I really think that these guys are going to come back to form, and I think it's hopefully just a slump, much like the offense is in.
Yeah, and the other question will be is it's obviously to see what the Mets will do with the pitching on August 31st, because unless the rotation aligns just perfectly, you got to figure that quote unquote he's not staying in the game today, Stroman.
No, I wouldn't have thought so either. He confirmed it almost immediately on Twitter that said it's a shame I'm not going to be pitching for 5 days. Louis did say after the game he would consider bringing him back on short rest. He said that he's got Peterson and Walker definitely dialed in for the next 2, and he's got Jake for the day game on Thursday as a guarantee, but he kind of left Wednesday open for the possibility of Stroman coming back on short rest.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, I'm open to that too. I mean, I've been, Stroman pitched a great game this week too. Like I said, we got some great starting pitching out of everybody. It'll be interested to see the first full start with Joey coming up later on this week. But the other thing, having my final thought or final topic, I should say, is a non-Met one, and it goes back to Friday night. And knowing what this felt like as a fan, 9 years ago now, I wanted to get your take on the San Diego Padres finally getting their first no-hitter.
Yeah, good for them. They finally got that monkey off their back. It took them, God knows, forever. It took them 200 more games than it took the Mets to finally have their no thrown. So good for the Padres to finally get that off their back. I mean, they've obviously had a bit of bad news at Tatis, and they're looking for things to hang their hat on. So yeah, good for them getting that no.
Yeah, and they may even get Tatis back this week. That's the kicker. That'll I hope he's not rushing back, because I sure hate to see him lost for an extended period of time, because his talents are so good for the game of baseball. There's no question about that. But I thought it was poignant that much like Johan's no-hitter was saved by a Queens boy. The San Diego no-hitter was pitched by a San Diego boy, and it's just kind of nice when you also have a hometown connection to your no-hitter. Yeah, Mike Baxter didn't throw it, but he sure saved it.
Yeah, for real. That was a nice little connection there, and it was. I was fortunate enough. I got the text alert, so I was able to quick get over to Baseball Tonight or what was it, whatever baseball network calls their nightly show now. Flip that on and get to see the last outs of that game. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I always say I am a Met fan first and foremost amongst teams, but I am a true fan of the baseball, Major League Baseball, and all of the warts and all of the things that you could say about baseball, about sports. You can't cancel out the true beauty of the sport, and that was what was on display in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. The fans who were in the building were really into it, and even though it was happening to their team, but you could tell that they were into it, and there was definitely a good feeling all around that as it was happening and playing out.
Now, I know you weren't out there June 1st, 2012, but have you ever been anywhere close to a no-hitter?
No, the closest I've come to fame was my brother had tickets to the David Wells game, the infamous Beanie Baby no, and he ended up not using them. He didn't go to the game that day. Yeah, that was the closest I've come.
Yeah, the closest I've come was a AAA doubleheader, and of course there's 7 innings, much as we've learned recently, a doubleheader. And I'm reasonably certain, if memory holds, that the pitcher took a no-hitter into the 7th inning and 1 out. So 2 outs from the no-hitter, and my memory tells me it was Pat Mahomes.
All right.
Now, whether or not records of AAA are not as well kept as they are for Major League Baseball, so I can't confirm that memory. But my memory is being 2 outs from a no-hitter, albeit in the 7th inning. So count it if you will, count it if you won't. But the only other thing was I went to a ball game the night before up in Seattle, the night before Umber's perfect game against the Mariners a few years ago.
Yep, remember that one well. Now, the closest I've gotten in person, and it wasn't really close because he gave up the first hit early on, was game 161, Johan Santana 2-hitter. And honestly, that game was probably as exciting as some no-hitters because Johan basically left his soul on the field that day trying to get the Mets to game 162, which he, of course, did.
And I just remembered I was at Bartolo's when Bartolo took one into the 7th in Seattle back in 2014, I believe it was. And I was there as well. I almost forgot that I was there. I remember walking the concourse during that one while he was pitching, watching on the monitors. I was starting to get too nervous.
Yeah, you get that way for sure. For sure.
And
The fine thing about
it was broken up by none other than Robinson Cano.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, I was. The funny thing about the Johan game was I was sitting out in the Pepsi picnic area, and it's my biggest regret that it took until one day left of the existence of Shea Stadium that I had not sat in the Pepsi picnic area. But Gary, Keith, and Ron did an event that day in the Pepsi picnic area, and I just loved the atmosphere out there. It was so much fun. I sat with our old buddy Dana Brand for a portion of the game, and it was just like I was saying, "Hey, this blogger, hey, that guy from the message boards." It was a good time sitting out there, and I wish I had gone to the Pepsi picnic area more at Shea because that was a blast.
Yeah, that I never got out there, so I I get the sentiment, but everybody ever heard they did have fun. Well, of course, speaking of having fun, I've had fun with you here for the last 45 minutes or so. Certainly appreciate that. And again, our thanks to Michael Barron for hanging out with us just a little bit. Any final thoughts, my friend?
Let's go Mets. Let's go beat up the Phils a little bit.
Yeah, let's try and do it. I appreciate it. We'll talk again next week. Until then, let's go Mets.